Well, welcome along everybody, or welcome back to Oulton Park in Cheshire for our second race this weekend in the 2025 Ferrari Challenge UK. The cars are just making their way out onto circuit now in what is glorious sunshine, very similar to the conditions that we had yesterday. It was slightly overcast for qualifying this morning, which saw the track temperature slightly lower, the air slightly denser, and therefore for some of the sessions the lap times did tumble compared to yesterday's qualifying session. But the sun has broken through, there is not a cloud in the sky. Oulton Park, as ever, looks fantastic in the sunlight, and these glorious looking Ferrari 296 Challenge spec cars make their way out onto circuit. Mark Werrell chatting to you now, joined alongside by Johnny Palmer. Johnny, 30 minutes plus one lap we've got ahead of us for race 2 of the weekend.
And with yesterday's race, an absolute barnstormer, particularly towards the end with the Copa Shell battle. I'm really excited about a repeat of that, potentially, particularly as how the Copa Shell cars have qualified. We'll learn a little bit more about that in a second, because if you weren't around for qualifying earlier, it was a quicker session for one half of the grid, slightly slower for the other, but actually within Copa Shell, those gaps were really condensed compared to yesterday.
They certainly were. Track temperature for qualifying was, what was it, about 24 degrees. It's 36 degrees now, the track temperature. Air temperature 17 degrees. And for some of those cars in qualifying, we saw some cars stay out a little bit longer in qualifying. They'll have used up a very small amount of wear on those tyres, but now it's 36 degrees. I think tyre degradation and managing your tyres is going to be critical. So before we start to focus on race number 2, let's just look back at some of the highlights from race 1. Paul Simerson, he will start the race on pole position. Mike Dewhurst fires one up the inside going in towards Cascade. It is going to be a win for Gilbert Yates. So Gilbert Yates converting his 11th consecutive Trofeo Pirelli to a race win yesterday. And in Copa Shell, that fantastic overtaking move by Mike Dewhurst over Paul Simonson on the very final lap brought him the win in Copa Shell. So that was yesterday's race. Of course, we had the qualifying session earlier on, which gives us the grid for the cars that are just making their way out onto circuit now. So again, if you're watching the stream, let's just look back at some of the highlights from qualifying. Peter Hunter claiming pole position. So after pole and a win yesterday for Gilbert Yates, it's another pole position again today, Johnny Palmer, his 12th on the trot. And for Peter Hunter, he left it very late in the session to grab his pole position in Copa-Shell.
He certainly did, and it maybe looked unlikely with about 2 or 3 minutes to go, but on his 9th and final tour, Peter Hunter snatched pole position away from the two star performers yesterday, Paul Simerson and Mike Dewhurst. I think that's going to be really spicy now in Copa-Shell, particularly if Peter Hunter can get a good start. He can get ahead of some of the Trofeo Pirelli cars early doors and try and hold Simerson and Dewhurst off for the whole of the race.
But he did stay out quite late on in the session. How much life has he taken out of those Pirellis? That's the big question for me with Peter Hunter.
Yeah, true, because his opponents had already pitted to save that tyre life. So it's a good point that you make, doing 9 laps. Half of those laps, 4.5 laps if you like, will have been done on the older tyre, the tyre that was brought back into the scenario from yesterday. So by the time that he'd bolted on the brand new set of Pirellis that are used for qualifying and the 30-minute race, how many laps did he put on those? Maybe only 4, possibly 5. And I'm sure, Peter Hunter's been around the block for quite some time. So I'm sure that that will have been in mind for both him and his driver coach. There are pit-to-car radios. All of these drivers that are non-professional have a professional coach alongside them, and they are mightily experienced as well, although some of them are quite young, still in their early 20s, but able to offer that advice all the way around the circuit. And I think, Peter Hunter's got a few tricks up his sleeve for this afternoon's race.
So we will pick up on that. We'll find out exactly who's taken more life out of their tyres. But down there on the grid, who will be able to bring us in and chat to some of the drivers that are looking forward to this second race, we've got Amanda Stretton, who is partnered up again with Dave Richardson.
That sounds really formal and official. She's partnered up with Dave Richardson once again, as if it's a cross you have to bear, Amanda Stretton. Hello.
Hello. Isn't it lovely? The sun has finally come out. Obviously, if you joined us earlier on for qualifying, it was really cold. It was the first time all weekend the track temperature has barely registered, and we're all wrapped up in our woolies. But the sun has come out, and we're back to racing in the British summertime.
I'm going to nip over here, if I may, because somebody that's been really, really impressive is Paul Dixon and Jody Fanning, driver coach here. This will be effectively 4th race for Paul because, of course, he was in Club Challenge last year. We're really seeing an improvement trajectory. Is it down to his talent or your talent, Jody?
He's the one driving, isn't he? No, of course it's him. Yeah, it's a bit of a steep learning curve, of course. He did Club Challenge last year, sort of got his foot in with these race weekends. Really showed well end of the year last year. He was sort of ended up quickest in that. So the natural next step was obviously to the challenge. 296, new car, new challenge. No pun intended. But no, he's doing really well. He's getting used to it, getting up to speed more. And yeah, obviously the race environment is a bit different to what he did last year. So the race starts especially, and getting up to speed on cold tyres are kind of the biggest learning curve. But yeah, he's getting up to speed really well.
Was it always the plan, Jody? Because, of course, it was a kind of a double step up, wasn't it? Because Club Challenge with the 488 car, therefore moving from the Club Challenge to the Challenge Series is a step in its own right. When you've got a different car as well, that was always the plan?
Yeah, I think obviously that's how it happened with the way the UK Challenge Series went with the cars. But yeah, it's a big step up. It's a big improvement also on the 488. It's more towards a GT3 car, I'd say, from my experience. So yeah, it's very stable, very quick car as well. Very challenging to drive. But yeah, it's very rewarding. But like you say, it's a double kind of step up. But he's got used to the car well, getting used to the racing, so no, we're enjoying it, and the sun's shining, so what's not to love?
Couldn't be better, really, could it? Very good luck to you, Mr. Dixon. I hope you have a brilliant race. I'm not going to go and disturb him because that would be really unfair, and we'll let Jody continue his prep with Mr. Dixon, who will be heading off in just a moment. In the meantime, I don't know where she is, but it will be great, and that's Amanda.
I've moved a little bit further up the grid, Dave, because I think there's one man who we really can't not speak about, and that is, of course, Peter Hunter. Starting in pole in Copa-Shell. I mean, Peter has been so incredibly solid, really, since the season began. Starting in pole, as I say, in Copa-Shell, I mean, barely a second separating the top 3, and he's obviously got Mike Dewhurst starting right behind him. So, look, Peter, I mean, you've done so well. No, you're not taking it. You've got to behave yourself. You've done so incredibly well. Thank you. I was going to say you're really driving maturely.
Yes, very much.
Okay, but look, in all seriousness, it all comes down to business in here. You've worked really hard, and of course you've got such massive competition around you.
All right, that'll make me feel better. Jesus Christ.
But how do you focus?
I just try not to be as silly as what I am off camera.
Okay.
So just head down, balls out, send it.
Great stuff. Good luck. Go well. We got high hopes for you for this race. There we go. He's always. You never quite know what you're going to get with Peter Hunter, but as I say, a really solid effort from him, and with any luck, we're going to see a terrific race, particularly, in the. That's all right. In the Copa Shell part of this race. Dave, whereabouts are you?
Right behind you, Amanda, as is my wont in life, of course, and I'm joined by Jason Huff from the Scuderia Ferrari Club. I've got it right. It's tell me about the club, please.
So basically, it's an organisation for fans of Ferrari racing activities. It's about getting events like this, getting to see the cars up close, and getting to enjoy the action, really.
And somebody that is a Ferrari fan, how can they be a part of that? How can they be a part of that club?
Just join online on our website, www.sfcsilverstone.co.uk. Simple as that.
You did it better than I could have done it. Well done, and well done for all your efforts. Of course, around the world, everybody wants to be a part of Ferrari, and there are various clubs that you can be a part of, and I'd urge you to take a look at that. Amanda, we're getting towards the sharp end, and the race is not far away now.
That's right, Dave. No, we got just the 3-minute board is going and whistles are blowing. But talking about joining the Ferrari Club, one person I would just want to mention who is new to the challenge this year is young driver Callum Leatham, really coming along as well. Callum, are you Johnny? Oh, Johnny, let's talk to you. No, we'll talk. Okay, we'll talk to Callum. Callum, how are you feeling? I mean, your race yesterday, you had a spin. It was all a bit of a blur. How are you feeling this afternoon?
I'm so nervous, so nervous. Just want to stay where I am or just keep it clean, everyone's okay, just hopefully.
And what does Johnny say to you as you're going round?
Oh, he doesn't talk much. It kind of distracts me if I hear something and I'm going into a corner. So if he says anything to me, it's on this straight, and it's normally just how many laps left and time, that's normally just what it is.
Okay. Well, listen, good luck. Get my hand out because I can't do it otherwise. Very best of luck and go well. Starting in third. So he's got Gilbert Yates right in front of him. Going to be a very exciting race. Let's see if Gilbert can make it 2 of 2. Dave, what do you think?
Well, I think there's every possibility. I know Amanda is going to come and join me just before we get to the start of the race, but there's big drama going on here, Amanda, because you can see engineers are working on the Pranav Vangala car as we speak, so close to the start of the race. This is what a racing driver does not need, I would suggest.
Gosh, no. Pranav will be terribly concerned about this. I don't know if we've got any idea what is going on.
Well, whatever it is, whatever it was, it looks like it's been sorted to the satisfaction of everybody. The thumbs up from Pranav Vangala. So a little bit of late drama ahead of the start of the race. Amanda is straight in there to try and find out a little more information than I was able to glean. She's like a ferret, in terms of getting info. What have you found out?
Right, well, it appears Pranav's car has gone into limp mode, which is the safety mode, which enables the car... Sorry, did you just say that?
I never said anything, not at all.
Oh, I see. The safety mode, which enables the car to come back into the pits in a safe mode if it runs into any problem. They're trying to sort it out. Not sure whether they have or not, so we're just going to have to wait and see when he restarts the car. But the 30-second board is gone up now, so it's not going to be long.
Thanks, Amanda Stratton, then the very latest information from her. So there we have it. It's time for race 2, Ferrari Challenge UK, with Mark Werrell and Johnny Palmer.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, fingers crossed that Pranav Vangala's car has had Alt, Control and Delete pressed and it sort of reset itself, and that will hopefully remove the limp mode. But let's just confirm then the championship points for you coming into this race. Gilbert Yates leads the championship on 51 points, so has a 10-point advantage over the man that sits 2 drivers left on the grid, Pranav Vangala. Callum Leatham is third in the championship on 24 points, and it's John Marquardt and Bal Sidhu with... then you could see Oscar Rosenvik ahead of Mehandrai Piller, Fedor Samarokov and Joe Dean at 9th in Trofeo Pirelli. When we go to Copa Shell, as the cars head off onto their formation lap, Copa Shell, we've seen Mike Dewhurst claim 2 race wins so far this year, so he's on 47 points, 5 points ahead of his main championship rival in the early stages of Paul Simerson. Peter Hunt, who starts from pole, is 3rd. Then it's Stephen Dobson from the 2 Pauls, Rogers and Dixon. Darren Howell is 7th, ahead of Johnny Satchel in 8th place. Yasin Sert is next up, and Sean Rann is there in 10th position. So those are the championship points coming into this race. As for Oulton Park, we're on the full international circuit here. So it is just under 2.7 miles long. Twists and turns, there's some fast sections, some slow and some technical sections, and of course the bumps and the changes in elevation as well. Plenty of turns if we include all the little kinks, 17 turns. So there's plenty to get to grips with, and as we say, you know, each one of those corners presents its own challenge, in particular at Oulton Park when the barriers are so close to the edge of the track. Let's confirm also then the grid for you and the way that they line up for this second race of the weekend. It is on pole position Gilbert Yates, and Pranav Vangala sits alongside. Row 2 of the grid is Callum Leatham and John Markar. As we move on to the 3rd row of the grid, on the inside of the 3rd row of the grid, it's Hamandra Pillai and Bal Sidhu. And row number 4 sees Fedor Samarokov line up alongside Joe Dean in the spare car, because he had an incident in his car yesterday and has hopped into the spare. The 5th row of the grid sees the first cars in Copa Shell. Peter Hunter and Paul Simerson line up on the front row of the grid for Copa Shell in reality. That's row 5. And row 6 is Mike Dewhurst and championship returnee Paul Rogers. Then as we head on to row number 7, the inside of the 7th row is Steve Dobson and Paul Dixon. Jonathan Satchel has Darren Howell for company on row number 8, and row number 9 of the grid is going to be Hussein Sert, who sits there on his own on row number 9. So the cars making their way out of Druids are about to head underneath the Warwick Bridge. So for the second time this weekend, we're about to go racing in the Ferrari Challenge UK. So safety car just coming up towards Lodge Corner now. We saw an incident on lap number 1 yesterday, which meant that we briefly had to pause the race and get a safety car restart done. Let's hope today that everybody is lined up in the appropriate order. Gilbert Yates is on his own on the front row of the grid, because Pranav Vangala is going to dive for the pit lane. All is not well with the car, so Gilbert Yates has clear road to head up towards Old Hall Corner for the first time, albeit he is under attack from Callum Leatham, who was looking to try and squeeze his way up the inside, but the door was closed. Somebody runs out a little bit wide in the mid-pack and also towards the tail end of the field, but Gilbert Yates leads away from Callum Leatham in 2nd position, and it looks as though everybody has safely got through the first couple of corners within the early stages of Copa Shell. Paul Simerson has got the jump on Peter Hunter in Copa Shell.
Yeah, that's a key move, I would say, for Paul Simerson to leapfrog Peter Hunter nice and early. A lot of confusion for those on the 2nd and 3rd rows, because they weren't quite sure what Pranav Vangala was trying to do. We knew about the issue with the limp mode for car 29, and he did put the indicator on to say, I'm trying to access pit lane, but of course he wasn't on that side of the road within the grid, so it was quite an awkward start for those in behind. Fair play to Callum Leatham, he was fully up the inside, but just had that bit in hand to ease back into 2nd.
Yeah, it might not be that experienced, Callum Leatham, but that was sensible driving, wasn't it? Just backing out of the move, early stages of the race, and didn't want to press the point too early on. Trying to dive his way through there is Joseph Dean at the wheel of the all-red Ferrari for today. Couldn't quite manage to unlock the door and squeeze his way through. The rest of the Copa Shell competitors just working their way through, and it looks so there has been a change in the order. Hussein Sert has got himself ahead of Darren Howell. Those two were in penultimate and last position on the grid respectively, but there has been a swap in that order there, as underneath the Warwick Bridge already you can see Gilbert Yates is starting to put a gap on Callum Leatham, who equally as much has got a bit of daylight between himself and the 3rd place car of Bal Sidhu, who, as we said earlier on in qualifying, was struggling a little bit yesterday with jet lag. He's had a good night's sleep, and look at the way he's going today. Really
well driven first lap for Bal Sidhu, heading now into the first corner, but Pranav Vangala not going anywhere in a hurry, Mark.
No, he's not. There's a big sideways moment, and I'm afraid off and into the barriers with a big hit goes Joe Dean. He ran wide coming out of Old Hall Corner. The car was on the grass. It spat him into the barriers on the right-hand side, and I'm afraid to say that the car that had an incident yesterday and brought about initially a safety car and then a red flag has had another incident and is damaged in the middle of the circuit.
Yeah, we've seen that happen so many times over the years here at Oulton Park, running wide, and you try and recover the situation, coax the car back, but it can rotate on you with very little warning. So heading into the first corner, just out onto the curb and the grasscrete, he tries to hold it, but then finally the back end loops around, and unfortunately that's again the nature of this Oulton Park circuit. The barriers are so close to the edge of the track and in on a couple of corners, then back into the middle of the track, and everybody else responded so well seeing those yellow flags.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Simerson was on the brakes very quickly as the car was spinning across his nose, so he reacted to it very quickly to make sure that he stayed out of harm's way. But with that car stricken in the middle of the circuit, not surprising at all, Johnny, that unfortunately the red flag is coming out again, I'm afraid, and unfortunately it's for the same driver as yesterday. How unfortunate.
Yeah, it's because of the debris that's in the middle of the track. It's because the car is stuck there, of course, as well, and it's not going to go anywhere in a hurry. The key situation here is that Joe Dean is okay, and he looks like he's in conversation with the marshals, but they will give him all the time in the world now just to get out of that car under his own steam if he can. But I mean, he was eager to get back on the horse, if you like, after his incident down at Shell Oil's hairpin yesterday. But at about the same sort of time as yesterday's race, again, he's had a big incident, which on dry grass, on that grasscrete that sits the other side of the curb, it's so difficult to sort yourself out once you are that far wide.
Yeah, the car was just sort of skipping around a little bit, wasn't it? And then, understandably, you're trying to correct that with varying steering input just to try and bring the car back under your spell, and it just got away from him, I'm afraid. So he will be chatting to the marshals. They'll just be checking that he is okay. And as we mentioned yesterday, you know, the outgoing car, the Ferrari 488 Evo, has a very strong structure built around it. The Ferrari 296, Johnny, is another step forward again in terms of making sure that we look after our drivers when there is an incident.
The safety cell within the car, you see the exterior body panels, but well within that by a good few centimetres is such a strong roll cage. The way these cars are built, they're exclusively racing cars. It's not as if you're taking a Ferrari 296 GTB and turning it into a challenge car. They're built as challenge cars from scratch, so the roll cage is the integral bit, and then everything else hangs off it. But that is entirely to keep the driver as safe as possible. But it's just such a pity for Joe Dean, because I know he was kicking himself at his own error. He held up his hands to the fact that yesterday was his mistake, and he was starting to get Shell Oils and the approach to Shell Oils through Ireland much better. But this time it's another part of this racetrack which can bite you in all areas where he's come a cropper.
Yeah, he has. So all of the cars at the moment just being held by our marshals and officials. They're not sort of back up into position on the grid just as yet. They're just a bit short of that. We'd only just literally completed the first lap, so it's highly likely to be a full restart. And this could offer up a glimmer of hope for Pranav Vangala, who sits in the pit lane, because if there is some sort of restart, yes, he might have a pit lane start, but at least he might be able to start if they can solve the problem with his stricken car that, of course, qualified second quickest.
Yeah, because effectively that first attempt at the race has been wiped clean now. The red flag's coming out on technically the second lap, so it depends how far back we go, whether with the original grid or with the order at the end of the first lap. But well, the way things are being marked out at the moment, it rather suggests that it is the original grid lineup. But yeah, this could be the saving grace for Pranav Vangala, as long as his team can sort out this limp mode issue. Looked like they were pretty close to doing that on the grid. In fact, they were confident enough to send the car out onto its rolling lap. But then clearly at the end of that, Pranav realised something wasn't right. So if it is a quick fix, if it is a reset within the electrical department, the ECU perhaps, then let's hope that we can go back to not quite the full complement, because it will be without Joe Dean. But if Pranav can be on the front row, all the better.
Yeah, all the better. So Joe Dean has had a troubled weekend, but he did provide a fantastic insight with an onboard lap to us from his 296 earlier on this weekend. So you come over the start-finish line, you're flat out in 5th gear, coming up towards the corner where he's just had his instant brake. You're down to 4th, pick up the curb on the inside, be careful not to run wide, otherwise it will bite you, those barriers, as we've just seen. And then you head down towards Denton's, flat out, brake down to 3rd for Cascades, pick up the apex, let the car run out wide, try to stay within the confines of the circuit. It's so easy to run wide there at that part of the corner. You're up to 5th gear as you head up towards Lakeside, another daunting part of the circuit where, again, if you run wide on the exit, as poor old Joe did yesterday, you could end up in the gravel trap there at Shell Oils. For Shell Oils, you are onto the brakes. Then, of course, you'll be down to third gear for that corner. Pick up the speed again and build up to fourth. Hold it in fourth. On occasions, you might have enough speed to briefly get up into fifth as you then head through the Britain chicane. Down to third, midway through that corner. Fire the car out of the corner, over hilltop. You're up to fifth gear as you then brake downhill in towards Hidslops. Brake down to third, 2 gears. Pick up the curb on the inside. Pick up the curb on the left-hand side, but be careful with that tyre stack there. And then for Knickerbrook, it's a very slight lift. And again, avoid the tyre stack on the inside. Use all of the curb on the exit and build the speed as you start to head up Clay Hill towards Druids. You're up into fifth gear for Druids. And then as you flick your way in towards the double apex right-hander, brake down to fourth, pick up the first apex, pick up the second apex, let the car run out wide, but be careful. Joe Dean on the onboard lap has a little bit of traffic just to deal with on the approach towards Lodge, and again, Lodge, brake from fifth, down to third, concentrate on the exit, make sure you don't run wide, and then fire the car out of the corner, flat out over Deerleap, over the start-finish line, and that is a 2.692 mile lap of the Oulton Park International Circuit. So that's what the circuit looks like from an onboard perspective. And as ever, down there on the grid to maybe chat to a few of the drivers, give us an update. I can see that we've got Amanda Stretton and once more, Davey Richardson.
Yes, the on-track perspective, if you like. Mark, Amanda, I know just before that stoppage, you were trying to ascertain what was going on with Pranav Vankala.
Yes, sadly, I didn't actually get to see what happened to Joe Dean because I was had my head in Pranav's cockpit. And it seems that they couldn't get the car out of the limp mode. They have now managed to do it.
Oh, okay.
So Pranav wants to restart the race, but of course the race has actually taken 1 lap so far, although the red flag came out on the first lap. So currently what's going on is a decision is being made up at race control, and actually these 2 guys up in the gantry just behind me are waiting to report back as to whether Pranav is going to be able to come and start on the front of the grid or whether he's going to have to start from the pit lane.
So you've taken the question out of my mouth, because that was the obvious question for me, because an entire lap didn't get completed. Therefore, my knowledge would suggest that he should be allowed to take the restart.
Different race series, different regulations.
I don't know enough.
No, and exactly. It's open to interpretation. We need to have eyes on the actual regulations and see what it says. But that is the job of race control.
We don't have them in our pocket at the moment.
Thankfully, that's not our responsibility, but very frustrating. And my heart goes out to poor old Joe Dean, or poor young Joe Dean, because I mean, it was such a blow to him yesterday, and he really was gutted at having made what really was just a sort of innocent mistake. It just bit him, and the same thing seemed to happen today as well.
I
so
agree.
Devastating news for him.
I often say about this lovely sport of ours, which is utterly beautiful, it can be utterly brutal as well, and today and yesterday it has been for Joe.
It has. It's going to be a weekend that he would quite like to forget, but there we go. If he can just take this all on the chin and you know, learn from the experience, he's going to be a better driver in the long term for it.
Yeah, of course. Just as we're walking down here, we can see Gilbert Yates and Tom Fleming. Tom Fleming is, of course, Gilbert's driver coach. I hope Gilbert won't mind if I just nab
I'll move out the way.
Tom here. Tom, come back, you devil of a man.
Can't get away from you too quick.
What's the deal, to your knowledge, and Gilbert, of course, will be interested in this as well. Pranav car had a fault, went into the pit lane, not 1 lap got completed. Will he have to start, do you think, from the pit lane if they manage to solve it, or can he restart the grid as it's a restart?
Well,
you don't know, do you?
Well, the rule book is always so convoluted. There's like a million different scenarios that could play out. What would make the most sense is that obviously he's missed the first official race start. And yeah, if they haven't been able to get onto the grid and start the actual race itself by starting in the pit lane, then I could only assume that on the restart, when we get it, he should start from pit lane.
Okay, that comes from a proper driver coach and a top racing driver, Tom Fleming.
But not an expert of the rule book.
Okay, yeah, you've done that. Something else I wanted to say to you, Tom, before you exited the camera, you're going to learn about this telly business, friend, is Gilbert Yates, your driver, doing a fantastic job. What really, really impresses me is that Gilbert always credits you and says that, you know, he's absorbing everything you're saying. That man is talented, though, isn't he, Tom?
Absolutely. I mean, all the driver coaches here are to an exceptional standard. So it's just based on the customer really as to whether they listen or not. But no, Gilbert does a really good job. We have a very similar language when we're speaking in terms of our analytical views, and we understand each other really well. And something like that amount of trust, in these extremely impressively quick cars around this circuit, you've got to have trust in your driver coach to be able to say, yeah, this is the amount of speed that you've got to carry through here. So no, Gilbert trusts me really well, and he's very responsive to everything that I say, which has led him to this point. So, all credit to him, really.
I agree. He's doing a brilliant job. Well done. What a great combo, Gilbert and Tom there. And Amanda is back alongside me.
I'm actually going to be in this direction, because one driver I'd like to have a word with is John McCarr, because we haven't really spoken an awful lot to him recently. Hey, John.
Hello, Amanda. How are you?
I'm very well, but listen, how are you? And have you so far been enjoying all of this? I know this is frustrating, but you'll be getting quite used to having these race restarts.
Yeah, it's pretty unusual to have two in a weekend, but there we are. My least favourite part of the race, if I'm honest, but here we are. It's all practice, isn't it? This is only my second ever race weekend of my life, so I am fully in at the deep end here in every aspect, both from car, from tyres to circuit to, having to start 4 times.
Listen, there's nothing like getting a good bit of race start under your belt and getting the experience of that. But what is it that you have found the most interesting, the most different? Because, of course, you're quite an experienced driver, having driven all sorts of cars, but nothing quite compares to racing. So what is it you have taken the most surprise at, or the longest to adapt to?
Slick tyres, firstly, is a whole new learning curve for me, and installing tyres, learning about bringing in the grip. That's been a whole new task, and luckily I've got a brilliant driver coach, Miles Lacey, who's been talking me through that. He's in my ears constantly, just reminding me. And of course, downforce. I've never experienced downforce before. So, almost 900 kilos of downforce of these things at full whack. So that takes some getting used to. It takes some brave pills. Go faster to be grippy. It's the most counterintuitive thing, but it works. And hopefully, so far so good. We've been learning it well, and hopefully we'll just have another fun race.
Well, we're just being told that it's going to be about 14 minutes for a restart, and it is going to be a full restart. Miles, you look a little bit surprised at that. You can come and join us. We've got 14 minutes to kill, so...
Is this what you call filler?
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, it's starting the race is always the most apprehensive part for anyone, even for experienced drivers, So when you're forced into doing more than what's necessary, it's never ideal. But it does give us, however, another bite at the cherry, which is great news. That was a medical car, by the way. But, as John said, for John, this is literally second race weekend ever in the Ferrari. The 296 is so fast. It's so ballistically fast. For anyone, even for a pro driver, it's going around here delivering some incredible lap times. And it's trying to extract what the car's able to give, and that's the kind of job that we're trying to do. And dare I say, we're chipping away. Yeah.
Well, I was saying to John earlier on, I mean, he's sort of been slowly and quietly, for one of the rookies joining, particularly in the Trofeo Pirelli class, you've been slowly and surely sort of nudging your way up, certainly showing consistency, which is, of course, Miles, as you know, the key.
Well, it is, and this is why we never get too upset about what we're doing in quali. That's going to come in terms of race pace, and what will definitely come as the season goes on will be racecraft for John, because the only experience before these 2 race weekends we've had was doing a few races in a Mazda MX-5, and as good as that is, I'd encourage anybody to do it. It's a very different animal to what's going on here. So I can expect if we made this amount of progress that we've made between race 1 and race 2, as in Navarra to Oulton, if we make that progress for each round, I'd be very, very happy, and I'm also very sure that we'll be up the order.
Now, of course, we've got Brands Hatch next, another tight, twisty, old school circuit. Then Donington, then Silverstone. Have you done track time at any of those other circuits?
Luckily, yes, but only ever in track days. And of course, I was part of the Ferrari Ready to Race program, which we did at the beginning of this year. That was to get my license, to get the signatures on the license. That was MX-5s at Brands Hatch, and had a wonderful time. And in fact, I won that little championship, which was brilliant. It was a great.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Did I mention that? Have I ever mentioned that? I think I have. So that was great. All the circuits I have experience in, but it's only ever really in track day conditions or in something at the pace of an MX-5. So it's going to be a completely different kettle of fish.
Yeah, you'll find Silverstone, particularly the big circuits with like lots of runoff, they are fast. They're so much faster than these little ones, aren't they?
Well, I think we can maybe all breathe a sigh of relief when we get to somewhere like Silverstone, because Navarra, to start at Navarra, was a very tricky circuit and so fast. Turning into turn 1 was over 160 miles an hour, which in any car feels quite grown up.
And that, I don't know what you were calling turn 1, but the turn 1 I'm thinking of wasn't even a lift.
Correct, it was just straight in. So off the end, which was a very long straight, and the car with 700 horsepower was really getting on with it. And then you've got to go, oh, brave pill, in we go. And thankfully we got there in the end, didn't we? But yeah, doing Navarra and then coming to Oulton, which we know is such a fast circuit, but one of the sort of more old-fashioned ones where not much runoff, quite narrow, and for these cars, when they're next to each other, it feels like you're driving around your living room. There's not much room to play with, so it's no small task. It's not an insignificant task, and without blowing too much smoke, he's doing okay.
Right, you know what that means now.
Yeah.
Don't mess it up.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. I have absolute confidence in you. Yeah, John doing a really, really solid job. Now, Dave, I think the car is just being moved off the track, so it's not going to be long before we get back under racing. What have you been finding out?
No, I have been patiently waiting and listening to everything you were saying with John and Miles, because it was compelling listening. Well done, Amanda Stratton. I'm here with Johnny Kane, who, of course, is responsible for Callum, who's here as well. Come on in and join us, Callum. Let's have a three-way here, as indeed Amanda did with Miles and John. So, what do you do as a coach here to keep this young man, who's already as cool as a cucumber, just relaxed and calm?
Well, he had a really good start in that one, so I just said repeat performance, so that'd be nice. So, no, he's doing a really good job. It's been a compact weekend. It's not an awful lot of track time. Never been here before. It's an unforgiving place sometimes, but when you've got weather like this at Oulton Park, it's, fantastic track to be at and to drive on when it's a weekend like this.
Well, so I don't want to give anything away. When it comes to our highlights programme on Sky Sports F1 in a couple of weeks' time, we can do a bit of a feature on Callum as well, because he is something of a young gun and a young star in the making, isn't he, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, very inexperienced so far and doing a really good job. I wasn't able to do the Navarra event because I was busy, but I obviously kept an eye on things, and he had a good run there. But, most of the drivers wouldn't have been to Navarra before, so it was a level playing field, whereas here, everyone has pretty much been here, apart from, anyone starting new like Callum. So the fact that he's P3 on the grid today and in front of, a majority of the other guys that have already been here, that's a really good showing.
He is doing really well, and it was an excellent start, Callum. Can you do it all over again?
I hope so. I wish, yeah. Sure.
Well, we will see in not many minutes' time, I think, Amanda.
No, not many minutes. But Callum, I am just going to let you know that Pranav is going to be taking his original grid position.
Oh, that's great. I saw the facial reaction there.
So, yeah, how do you feel about that?
I wish Joe stayed on track now.
Yeah. There we go. Right, I won't ask any more questions. Yeah, well, there we go. I was the bearer of great news for you.
Oh, well, apologies for any colour with the emotions, but Callum is perhaps going to have to work a bit harder than maybe he'd anticipated. Well done for gleaning that information.
That's all right. I hear things. I'm a woman. I can hear things even when people aren't talking to me.
I wasn't going to say anything like that, but you're absolutely right. Hey, Amanda Pillai here, who's doing a brilliant job as well. I have to say, hey, what is it? Is everybody just... do I smell or what? You're doing a great job, friend, and unfortunately, you're going to have to do it all over again because we're going to be restarting. But honestly, been really, really impressed with your performance this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, for getting to the car, the car is a lot easier to drive compared to last year. It has a lighter steering, so just less effort on our end. So hopefully we don't get too tired if half an hour race is long.
I understand that. You're a better man than me at being able to do it. Good luck to you. We'll continue going backwards down the grid because I really rather like this, to be fair.
Well, depending on how much time we have, if we get down as far as Darren, who is right at the back, it'd be interesting to get his take on that incident with
course.
Joe, because, of course...
We should target getting there.
OK, well...
Let's do that.
All right, OK, we're up. I can see him.
So the thing is, when Amanda says, wouldn't it be a good idea, or shouldn't we try and do, that basically means you are doing it.
I'm sure Charlotte would concur that that's exactly what we mean when we say these things.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. So as we're heading in that direction, I can see Stephen Dobson, who I'm going to grab a quick word with Stephen before you speak to Darren Howell.
Okay.
Stephen, always when you've got to do it all over again, you know, you kind of build yourself up and then you come down again, you've got to build it up again. How easy is that?
I'm always up, Dave.
Of course you are. Of course you are. Have you had a comfort break, Stephen?
I just did, yeah.
Ah, well done. The reason I'm saying this is because we could set our watch by the grid being put together and Stephen making his way for a comfort break.
Yeah, it's nervous what can I tell you? Everything's okay, though. We had a good start there. It was a bit of a shame. Feel sorry for Joe.
Yeah.
We ran through a load of debris, so hopefully there's nothing too terminal with the car. I think Mike did the same, so I was following Mike through carnage, basically. So, but I hope he's okay. I haven't heard. Is he okay?
No, we haven't heard either, so we're not going to conjecture it yet because we don't know, but doubtless that's something that Amanda is across as well. So good luck on your restart,
Thank you very much indeed. Nice to see you, Dave.
And you always. Amanda, as Andy, our cameraman, will spin round gracefully to focus on Amanda Stretton and Darren Howell here.
Thank you very much. Yes, Darren, that happened right in front of you. You just well, not quite right in front of you, but you narrowly missed him coming back on the track. What did you see, and at what moment were you aware of what was happening?
I just saw the car on the right, and then Sean shouted, my coach, thank God, go left, and I went onto the grass and avoided everything. So I was lucky.
You were very lucky. And I mean, I guess, you weren't particularly prepared. Did you actually see him, because he went wide on the left, I think, in the beginning. That's where the mistake sort of started. Did you see any of that?
No, I saw him on the right-hand side when he'd spun out to right, and then he was coming over to the left, I think. But there was two cars in front of me blocking it, and then, thank God, Sean shouted on the radio, go left, so...
Where is Sean?
He's around somewhere.
Run away. Yeah, well done, Sean. I mean, but that is the importance, isn't it, of having your driver coach in your ear, because they've got eyes and ears and they can see, but also the experience of just having that intuitive understanding of where the car's going to end up.
Yeah, I wouldn't have known where to go if he hadn't told me what to do. So, no, thank God.
Sean, he gets a beer tonight.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Gets several.
And what about you? I mean, how do you find this whole restart process?
Well, I gained 4 places, so I'm a bit annoyed, but we've just got to go back to how we were again, haven't we? So, but I'll just need the first couple of good laps, and then we'll see what happens in the race.
Okay, well, listen, go well. See if you can do 5 places this time.
Yeah, I'll try.
Okay, and then I'll buy you a beer.
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. Oh. I say, Amanda.
Well, that's only if he makes up some more positions. But the great news, well, for Pranav, not necessarily for everybody else, is that he has, of course, as I said earlier, been allowed to take his original grid position, and they have managed to get the car out of limp mode, and he is now making his way to the front row alongside Gilbert Yates.
Great news for Pranav. Less good news for some of his competitors. While we're here, I just wanted to have a word with Paul Dixon. Paul, met you right at the beginning of the year at a dealer event, actually, at Dick Love at Swindon. Of course, met you last year in Club Challenge. I have to say, for someone like you that has come up from Club Challenge into the Ferrari Challenge racing, after what was a relatively easy Navara, there's been a bit of a baptism of fire here at Oulton Park, because you'll end up with 4 race starts at least.
No, indeed, it's been quite a interesting start to both races. Now sort of Saturday, wondering what's going to happen again. Hopefully it suits me actually, because I got completely jumped on the start that time, so at least we're back in grid order. So if anything, I've gone 3 places back up on the grid. So yeah, see how we get on this time.
I want to, if I may, just go back in time a little bit and talk about Club Challenge in terms of a preparation route, if you will, into the Ferrari Challenge proper. Doubtless you're going to say you're going to be an advocate because you've done exactly that, but clearly it works.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, I thought Club Challenge was a really good way to actually get used to racing, get used to what the weekends are like, get used to what it's like to have a coach, just doing everything apart from the racing. So at least when I got to the racing this year, the racing was the only thing I had to actually deal with, rather than having to deal with the whole car, the whole everything else. So for me, I thought Club Challenge was excellent preparation for the racing.
Well, listen, we'll let you get prepared for the second start. Go well, won't you? And well done. We're glad you're on the grid. We really are. So thanks very much.
Sorry, I was just getting rid of my water bottle, and this really nice lady over there just put it in the bin for me.
Hello, nice lady, and thank you.
Sorry about that. Whilst you were busy, I just thought I could slip away.
Okay.
But thanks for calling me out.
Have you got any idea on how much time we've got?
Yes, we have about 9 minutes.
I'm slightly concerned. If you look at this car here, Andy, who is our cameraman, who's done sterling service, I have to say, as indeed has Stuart, who's also here as well. But there's a driver missing from the Johnny Satchel car. He's not in the car. Where is Jonathan Satchel? He'll be talking nicely to somebody.
He will be talking. Well, he always talks nicely to everybody.
Yes,
but
he does.
I'm guessing he's probably gone to spend a penny. But the drivers are now being instructed to get back in the cars, which means it's not going to be long before we get the 5-minute board.
So Paul Rogers is indeed one of those drivers who's heard the instruction, drivers please zip up, which has got nothing to do with volume or mouth, but everything to do with your overalls or all that, Charles, thank you, and get back in the car. I mean, here is Mr. Satchel.
We were just talking about you, wondering where you'd gone. Had you? No, it was all lovely. Had you just gone to get a drink?
I went for pee.
Went for pee, yes. Okay, right. Sorry. Okay, thanks for that.
I find this really frustrating because
yes.
if you manage to get a good start, you just lose all those places again, and now we start behind the safety car. It's just.
You just got to go and do it all again.
Welcome to the procession.
Off you go. Yeah, so 2 laps for the guys behind the safety car, which is the same process that we had yesterday.
Big thanks to Simon, our director, I should say, who keeps us up to date with everything in our ears, except he didn't keep me up to date in the location of Amanda. She was pitching things over the catch fencing to some poor unsuspecting lady who then had to retrieve her rubbish. Honestly. Good luck, Val.
Good luck, Val. We haven't really spoken to him.
We haven't spoken to Val, and we're not going to disturb him now because he's helmeted up, he's ready to go. So, Val, actually, Andy, if we can get round there, we can see what a brilliant... Don't worry, we're not going to disturb you, Val. You get in the car, because the reason is I want Andy to see just how it's a special way of getting in these fantastic 296 Challenge cars, which I have to say... Bal did an awful lot more gracefully than I would have ever done. Probably not you, but you'd have done it well. But me, well, shoehorn springs to mind.
Oh, no, I jump around like a little unicorn. I mean, honestly, nothing I do isn't graceful.
There's no question about that, is there? No question about that at all. So... all the drivers then doing as they have been told, which is get back in your cars, get your overalls done up, hands device on, crash helmets on. We are not many moments away from going racing, which is probably an opportune time for you to look at the camera with me and say, thanks for being down here on the grid with us. Mark, please help us out here.
Beyond help, I would say, both of them, Johnny. I'm sure you'll agree. But no, nice to catch up with a few of the drivers down there.
They're doing a sterling job, just as they did yesterday. We don't like these red flags. Clearly, none of the drivers do either. But in an effort to catch up with thoughts for those drivers that hung around on the grid, thank you, Dave, and thank you, Amanda, for all your efforts. Dave said to me last night, Johnny, that's our job. Yeah, but you've got to be good at it because you don't quite know who's going to be available to chat, who you can next fling a water bottle at. So it's all a big list of unknowns. Great work, both.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting, the dynamic there from some people. Darren Howell not happy that the red flag came out because he had had a good start. Paul Dixon very happy that it came out because he'd had a bad start. But you just got to put all that to the back of your mind because you've got to do it again, reset.
I know what he's saying because it's a different style of restart. Actually, we're going to start the clock behind the safety car and there's going to be 2 laps. So there's going to be a rolling lap and then 2 effectively racing laps, but you're not going to be able to overtake during those, and a single file restart. So any opportunity that lots of drivers might have had into Old Hall Corner, the first corner of Oulton Park, and Callum Leatham, had a really good go up the inside. That opportunity is arguably taken away now because you're going to be probably a car length back from your nearest rival who is in front. So there's still opportunity to overtake around here. You've just got to judge it slightly better. It might require the first 10 minutes or so to sit behind a rival and work out where your car is stronger.
Well, it didn't deter Mike Dewhurst from doing exactly that with Paul Simonson for the vast majority of yesterday's race until he picked his pocket on the final lap.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's very gutting for Paul Simonson today, isn't it? Because he'd actually got the jump on Peter Hunter. He's now going to be put alongside him again at the front of Cooper Shell. And to a certain extent, he's sort of shown his cards. He's shown what plan he might have been thinking about in the interval between qualifying and this race. So let's hope that he's got a few other tricks around. And also Mike Dewhurst will have been educated as to what Simonson's plans may be. So it's always good to have a couple of ideas ahead of the race itself.
And what about Pranav Vangala? I mean, what a get-out-of-jail card for him that red flag was. Looked as though he was going to be nowhere and was just going to have to sit in the pit lane and be a frustrated spectator. And here he is now for this restart on the front row of the grid.
And they were working on that car for quite some time, so I would be confident that they have managed to solve the issue. Sometimes those linked to electrical problems can namely take the longest to diagnose. If it was a simple ECU related problem, or just turn the engine off, reset back on again and hope that any memory has been wiped of that limp mode, that's what he'll be hoping for. Obviously they gambled on a rolling lap to see whether it would sort itself out. I just hope that's not going to re-emerge in the race when he may well have to retire as a result. But these Ferraris are cleverly built, that sometimes, you know, the wrong messages are sent, like any electrical appliance, if you like. But the mechanics know the cars from front to back. I'm sure they've solved the issue.
Yeah, millions of lines of code going one direction and the other in any modern car nowadays. But, you know, Pranav Vangala came out of the pit lane behind the safety car, followed the safety car around for a whole lap. Had there have been any sort of question mark in his mind that something wasn't quite right, he'd have come straight back into the pit lane, but he didn't. He's taken up his position on the grid. So I think Pranav is more than satisfied that whatever the problem was with that car has now been sorted.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there'll be sensors going over time suggesting do not race, but as long as everything's been reset, and the mechanics that look after these cars have had to be retrained to an extent as well. If they've come on from last season, they will have known all about the 488. This is a brand new 296 challenge car for season 2025 in the UK.
And now that camera has just panned around the front of Pranav Vangala's car. All of yesterday, I was absolutely positive that it was black with bits of white and yellow. It's not. It's a very dark metallic green, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's almost like a British racing green. But you can be forgiven for thinking that it's black, because from a distance it certainly takes that look. I think naturally black and white go well together, but no, it's a very deep green, and one of the smartest cars on the grid. But I have to say, it's up against some stiff competition. There's a lot of really good liveries there this year.
Some fantastic liveries this year, and yeah, I love the way people design liveries on the car, and you know, they all have a subtly different approach, and they all follow a particular body line or swage line. But what they come up with is so unique, individual pieces of art.
And you said that actually some have carried their 488 livery from last year into the new car, but that will have needed some adjustment because the body work itself, the car design has changed entirely. Others, a complete refresh, which has been a bit of a brain scramble for you and I as well to learn the new colours.
So off they go on their formation lap. So the 3-litre, nearly 700 brake horsepower V6 engines, twin turbos, of course, all head off the 296 Challenge specification car onto another formation lap. So it's going to be the first of probably 2, maybe even 3 formation laps. Let's reconfirm the grid for you then. It's Gilbert Yates on pole position, and now with Pranav Vangala lining up alongside him in the HRON car. Row 2 of the grid. It's Charles Hurst's representative, which is Callum Leatham. And for company, we heard from him on the grid representing Greypool Birmingham. It's John Marcar, who sits down row number 2. We get to the 3rd row of the grid, and on the inside of the 3rd row, it's Hamandra Pillai, racing for Stratstone Colchester, and Bal Sidhu, who lines up alongside him in what will be 6th position on the grid for HRON. 7th row of the grid, it's another HRON car, which is going to be Fedor Samarokov. And for company, he has going to have a gap alongside him where we should have had Joseph Dean, the man who brought about the red flag, unfortunately. Stratstone Manchester, plenty of support for the local dealer, the local driver as well, Peter Hunter. He's the first of the Cooper Shell cars, lining up on the 5th row of the grid. And for company, he has got Paul Simonson, who got the jump on him at the first start and led most of yesterday's race as well. And then as we head on to row number 6 of the grid, it's the Cooper Shell race winner from yesterday. Last year's runner-up in the Cooper Shell Championship, Mike Dewhurst for Dick Lovett Swindon. And alongside him, it is HRON's Paul Rogers, the number 20 car. Then as we head onto the 7th row of the grid, on the inside of the 7th row of the grid, it's Steve Dobson. and Paul Dixon and old Dick Lovett. Swindon 7th row of the grid. Row 8 of the grid, Jonathan Satchell and Darren Howell. And then the final row of the grid, which will be row number 9, it's going to be Hussein Sert, who lines up there for Maranello Sales, the Turkish driver, on what will be the 9th row of the grid. So the safety car bringing the cars around. We know, Johnny, it's going to be at least a couple of laps behind the safety car. And already you can see Pranav Van Gala working furiously to try and create some tyre temperature and some brake temperature in his car.
Yeah, so there's some heat from the road surface, certainly, as it's become quite a warm day after a almost chilly start this morning. The race clock does commence, as we'd expected it might. So this lap and probably one more was the message that was displayed on our screen a little earlier on. This is just to allow enough time for tyre temperature to be built, and also if you can build a gap to the car in front of you, you can do a bit of late braking, as long as you've got a gap behind, of course, as well. A bit of late braking to get some heat into these very clever ceramic discs too. Much better braking technology, I'm told, compared to last year's Ferrari 488, where they were going through quite a number of pads within the same day often. So you would do a free practice session and have to change pads at the end of a 40-minute free practice. Don't have to do that these days. However, there's a bit more finesse, you were telling me earlier on. Although these cars have ABS, the application is very, very important, particularly at a track like Oulton Park.
Yeah, it was Stephen Dobson that was talking to me and just suggesting that, you know, in the old 488 Evo, the outgoing car from last year and a few years prior, you could literally just stamp on the brakes into the corner and the car would anchor up, whereas it's more of a fly-by-wire braking system that we have in the 296 Challenge car. And actually, if you stamp on the brakes, the car doesn't seem to react and stop as quickly as you would expect it to. So you actually have to bleed back off the brake again, not go on as hard, and then bleed back off the brake going into the corners. So he said, you know, it's, from a driving perspective, I've been so used to the 488 and the way it reacts under braking. The 296 reacts very differently, and it's almost counterintuitive what you need to do. Not press it as hard and come off it even earlier before the corner.
Yeah, when you're wanting to really slow the car down. But that's a bit like the aero on these cars as well. Actually, the way you get them to stick to the road is to drive faster. But every cell in your brain is saying, no, I've got to go slower into this corner, slower into this corner. And then you've got the pro drivers, your coach is going, you've got a good second to find yet, but you've got to have faith in the science, actually, of the air flowing across the car, just like a Formula One car, pushing it down onto the road surface, and you get the reward for being braver into the slower speed corners.
Yeah, it's a switch in your brain that you need to flick, isn't it? To go fast, you need to go really fast, to trust in that aerodynamics of the car. But the flip side is, as we heard from Mike Dewhurst yesterday, the flip side is because these new cars have fantastic aero, they make a big hole in the air, and if you are tucked up behind a car, you do struggle with understeer to a larger degree than you did on the 488, and as Mike was suggesting yesterday, just by pulling out half a car's width from the car that you're tucked up behind, at least you're getting a bit more airflow over the front of your car, and that just helps press the nose of the car down into the ground a little bit more with that airflow, which stops the understeer to a degree and stops you overheating the tyres.
Well, yes, I think you're just in hot air behind one of these V6 powered cars, and all the warmth from the engine is flowing out as it's designed to do, but right into your face. And so that's hot air which will be heating brakes and tyres and your engine as well. So sometimes it's good to get a bit of fresh air. It also sows the seed of doubt in the driver you're trying to pass, because they might be thinking, is this a genuine attempt at an overtake or just a little dress rehearsal? So I like what Mike Dewhurst was doing yesterday in the wheel tracks of Paul Simerson. We kind of knew he was a bit too far back, but it's difficult from Paul's perspective because these cars don't have conventional rear view mirrors. We dealt with this yesterday, but because of that bulkhead, that solid bit of metal that sits behind your seating position and the engine, it's actually a rear facing camera which replicates a rear view mirror, but it's a digital screen on the top of the dashboard in order for you to see behind your car.
Yeah, and in a bright sunlight, you know, I know it when I've seen it on my car, and you drive in the motorhome, which has something similar, is that depending on the sun position, you get the sun glare as well. So it's not always clear what's behind you.
Yeah, and I mean, so many of these nice afternoons when you may be in watching a bit of TV, you have to sort of draw the curtains because you can't see the screen, and if you've got bright sunshine everywhere, it might be difficult to see that digital screen as well. Lights are out though, Mark.
Lights are out on the safety car, so we're going to get things back underway for what is in reality a safety car restart, so there'll be no overtaking until the cars get to the control line. And Gilbert Yates has done his final little bit of wiggling, gets on the throttle as he comes out of Lodge Corner, and we finally, albeit 25.5 minutes on the clock, get the first true racing lap underway for this restart. Up towards Old Hall Corner, Gilbert Yates leads the way from Pranav Vangala and Callum Leatham. Paul Simerson has not got the jump in Copa Shell over the light blue car from Stratstone manager of Peter Hunter this time through. So it is Peter Hunter that has the early lead in Copa Shell.
Down the hill they go into Cascades. Still tyre temperature, I would suggest, is not quite there. Already though 2 off, and is the Darren Howell car damaged? Yes, it is, front right. So does that mean he's tagged the back of the Jonathan Satchell car? They've both come in together, and his team, the Satchell team, are checking the rear. Dear me, I think there's been front to rear contact in the queue before the restart, Mark.
Yeah, so frustrating for both drivers. So Darren Howell caught out. Jonathan Satchell, don't know what he was doing to have a car run into the back of him, but I think Chris Diamond and the crew from HR Owen are giving a thumbs up to Johnny Satchell. He can make his way out onto circuit, albeit it's going to be a long way away from the lead pack of cars, which are already starting to head onto the brakes and turn their way in towards the Hislop chicane. So there goes Johnny Satchell, rocketing his way out of the pit lane area with what didn't look like a great deal of damage to the car, Johnny.
Well, crucially, the 2 exhaust pipes were straight. If you buckle one of those, then the gases can't get out, and that can result in a massively overheating engine. But they sit quite high up off the road surface, so yeah, it was more about the back of the rear left wheel arch that was a bit battered and bruised. It's nowhere near the extent of damage on the front of Darren Howell's car, which looks unlikely to rejoin. It's going to go a lap down now anyway. It's all happened on the run into Lodge by the look of the debris.
It has, yeah, debris all over the road at Lodge. So there's a change of surface flag being waved there by our fantastic Oulton Park marshers. So that's the yellow and the red striped flag, which is often referred to as the oil flag. It's not, it's actually a change of surface flag, so it indicates that, yeah, not all is quite as you would expect at that part of the circuit. So down through Cascades, John Markar under pressure from Hemandra Pillai. This is for 4th and 5th position. John, the motoring journalist, in his second weekend of racing. Hemandra Pillai in his second season of racing in Ferrari Challenge. Has a bit of a wiggle as he turned in towards Island Bend there and just had to correct the steering input. Didn't lose a great deal of time and is still now right back onto the coattails of the car that's just ahead of him, the number 16 car. For the lead of Copa Shell, it is still Stratstone Manchester's Peter Hunter that leads the way as he sits there in 7th place overall.
Yeah, both Peter and Paul Simerson have got ahead of Fedor Samarukov into what is 7th and 8th overall, so they have both managed to clear the back marker, if you like, the tail ender within Pirelli Trofeo, and that's not good news for Mike Dewhurst, who wanted to go with them, but now he's got to find a way by the all-black number 88. We're focusing on the scrap for 4th and 5th places within Trofeo Pirelli.
Yeah, as they just head up towards Druids now. John Markar still leading the way in 4th place from Hemandra Pillai, who's going to look to try and get a good run coming out of Druids, but he was probably a bit too keen working his way round through Druids, so he just ran a little bit wide and raised the dust. He clips a little bit of that debris as well that's just there on the approach in towards Lodge Corner, and again on exit of the corner, Hemandra Pillai must have been straight onto the gas, because you could see the tail end of his car wiggle around. Is he going to have another nibble at Lodge? He takes a slightly tighter line in. It's not going to work. So they head out of Old Hall Corner. Back into the pit lane, Johnny, comes Jonathan Satchell.
Yeah, Satchell gave it a lap just to test out how good the car was feeding back to him, and clearly the damage that he's picked up after that nose-to-tail contact just before the start of the race, the restart of the race, is a little too much. So it may have done some damage to the suspension as well as bending in the bodywork. Hemandra Pillai getting very close again to John Markar at the Shell Oils hairpin for 4th and 5th positions. This is playing nicely into the hands of Callum Leatham in 3rd position. He's about 3.5 seconds off the back of Pranav Vangala, who in turn is sticking with the race leader Gilbert Yates. There's only a second between them at the head of the field.
Yeah, it's rather close, isn't it, between 1st and 2nd place? But this squabble for 4th and 5th might be a squabble for 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th before too much longer, because the number 23 car, the black car with the gold stripe down the centre of it, Bal Sidhu, is starting to close in. He wants in on the fun that John Markar and Hemandra Pillai are having. And then you've got the front runners in Copa Shell, Peter Hunter, Paul Simerson, starting to work their way through. As for our race leading pair, though, they're just coming underneath the Warwick Bridge as things stand. And slowly, because the safety car is out, which I can only imagine is potentially for that debris at Lodge.
I was wondering how long the race direction crew were going to give that, because there is a racing line kind of just between the components that sit on the racetrack. It's more like bodywork, but some of that's incredibly sharp, and if you were attempting an overtake, you just can't do it safely right now at Lodge Corner, and it's important that the racetrack is free to race upon. So safety car will be actually out of turn 1 at Old Hall to pick the Gilbert Yates car up, but everybody very responsive to those safety car boards that were being displayed just the other side of the Paul Warwick Bridge. So really well behaved and reacting. I think probably most drivers thought that this was a matter of time by the extent of the debris which is sitting at Lodge.
Yeah, so rather disappointed Jonathan Satchell trudging his way up the pit lane, and he'll be bitterly disappointed with the way that the race has gone for him, and with that debris, which is from a mixture of probably his car and from Darren Howell sitting there on the circuit. There's more work for our Oulton Park marshals to do now that the race has been brought to a controlled status. Wander out and pick up well, what is a range of bits, some very large bits of carbon fibre, but it's the small bits you need to be careful of, Johnny. It's not just a case of it being sat there in the middle of the circuit. It's if cars run over it and then pick up a puncture and they're heading down Lakeside and a tyre goes, that's not a place you want to be, is it? So
yeah, and it's not going to happen straight away either. It does take a bit of time for a small piece of carbon to work its way deeply enough into the tyre to then eventually pop it, and you'll get no warning whatsoever. And it does tend to happen on the really fast bits where the tyre is most stressed. That's where a lot of the pickup is thrown off the tyre as well. By pickup, I mean as the rubber becomes more and more worn, then it kind of balls up and creates those marbles that we talk about just offline. But often they're flung off the car at the higher speeds. They also build up, of course, at turning points through the corners. But as we've seen with a couple of accidents already this weekend, if you did have a puncture on the really rapid sections between Druids and Lodge as well, it could happen, then you're going to be a passenger and very quickly into the barrier.
Yeah, so sensible work by the officials to bring the race to a controlled status, get the safety car out there, allow the sweeping up to be done, and then once that is done, and of course our marshals are back behind the safety of the barriers, then we can get the race back underway. The clock's still continuing to tick, of course, while all of this is going on, so we've got 18 minutes of the allotted time still remaining, plus the extra lap thereafter, because it's a 30-minute race plus 1 lap. And just to run you through the order, Gilbert Yates leads the way under safety car conditions, number 1 from the 29 car of Pranav Vangala. 3rd is number 95 Callum Leatham, and 4th is 16 John Markar. 5th is number 19 Hemandra Pillai, and completing the top 6 is number 23 Bal Sidhu. 7th place is the leader of Copa Shell, number 82 Peter Hunter. 8th place it's Copa Shell's number 77 Paul Simerson, and 9th place wraps up what is the Copa Shell podium potentially at the moment, which is going to be number 78 Mike Dewhurst. 10th is number 88 Fedor Samarakov, but I'll leave it there because the safety car lights are off, Johnny. It's going to come into the pit lane this time through, and we're going to get racing back underway.
Yeah, so Gilbert Yates has the responsibility of dictating the pace. Is everyone going to be able to stop? There was a hit there from Dewhurst on the back of Simerson, and now it's going to get even more dicey further back. That was Gilbert Yates not really doing anything too badly wrong, because he kept the speed of the safety car as it then pulled into the pit road. We have got underway, but a very untidy restart much further back in Copa Shell.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Mike Dewhurst had to anchor everything up to avoid clonking into the back of Paul Simerson there, and I think there might have been just the lightest of touches between the pair of them. Race gets back underway. Gilbert Yates feeling the pressure from Pranav Vangala as they head along Lakeside for what is the 7th time of asking in this race. They've already gapped and got a little bit of daylight between themselves and the 3rd place car of Callum Leatham. Pranav Vangala isn't really close enough to try anything at Shell Oils. It's not really an overtaking opportunity in the 296 Challenge cars. He'll just keep his powder dry for the moment, sit on the coattails of the race leader and, of course, championship leader as they flick their way through the Britain chicane, and Gilbert Yates using all of the track and maybe a little bit more available to him there.
One or two, particularly Callum Leatham, getting really good rotation of the car in the middle bit of Britain's, kind of helping or using the curb to help the car around. This early on in the race, you probably can still do that, although I'm sure the coaches are saying stay off the curves for the first few laps just as the tyres come up to temperature, because you don't want to stress the sidewalls still early on in, well, we've got 16 more minutes to do yet. So it's all about taking care of the situation, but that's very easily said when you're embroiled in a fight like these two are. John McCarr ahead of Hamandra Pillai. The focus is definitely trying to get the place from one another.
Yeah, it looks as though Paul Simerson has lost out to Mike Dewhurst on that lap, so I'm not quite sure what happened to the number 77 car of Paul Simerson there. So through and over the start-finish line goes the leader of Copa Shell, the light blue number 82 car of Peter Hunter. Then it is the 78 of Mike Dewhurst, and Paul Simerson, yeah, down a position there. So he drops now to 9th overall and 3rd in Copa Shell.
They've got ahead of Fedor Samarakov. Well, Samarakov's very close to Simonson's car, though, as they crest the rise at Denton's then and plummet downhill into Cascades. This is where Mike Dewhurst pulled off that whopping manoeuvre yesterday late in the race, so he's good into that section. But he did say that really Simonson had got his number in every other part of the racetrack. Does the same happen in reverse, as in, can Mike Dewhurst be just fast enough to keep the blue and red number 77 behind? Route out of Shell Oils might be slightly off the road for Mike Dewhurst, but it was only a couple of tyres onto the curbing. And of course, we'll remind you that Peter Hunter still sits ahead of these two battling cars within Copa Shell, so they are 2nd and 3rd at the moment. They finished 1st and 2nd yesterday, but it's the sky blue colours of Peter Hunter and the team of Stratstone Manchester who have got the jump again, something he wasn't able to do in the initial go at this race. So Hunter much happier, I'm sure, with this start, and is significantly ahead now of Dewhurst and co.
Yeah, just having a quick look through, because I couldn't recall from last year Peter Hunter having had a win in Copa Shell. A quick look through paperwork confirms that for me. He didn't have a win in his debut year either, so could potentially, if I've got things right, be on for his first win in Copa Shell. But there's a lot of this race still to go. 14 minutes plus the extra lap still for Peter Hunter to try and cling on to the lead of the race. Still Gilbert Yates leads by less than a second from Pranav Vangala. Callum Leatham sort of on his own a little bit now in 3rd position. And still this good fight going on for 4th and 5th as it heads down through Cascades. John Markar cannot shake away Hamandra Pillai, can he?
No, and Hamandra Pillai was able to qualify a bit better than Markar yesterday, so has had a quicker race car on Friday. It's not noticeably faster for Saturday's race, although the fact that John Markar can't shake the Malaysian driver rather suggests that if Pillai was able to get ahead, he might be able to open up a bit of a gap, but that's a big if at this stage. Callum Leatham just dancing around on the white line there. I don't think that was the ideal route into Britain's for John Markar and the all-black number 16. So is it likely he's going to be picked off on the run over Hilltop? No, again, Pillai not quite close enough. And as they slow one another up because of the battle, here comes Bal Sidhu in 6th position. Full four-wheel drifting coming out of the second bit of Hislops for the Malaysian driver, but he's about to be joined by Bal Sidhu in the number 23.
Yeah, Bal Sidhu going well here. Saw a small problem from him yesterday, a little spin which cost him a couple of places overall in the race, but the pair of cars which shortly will become a trio once Bal Sidhu joins them, just working their way up towards Lodge Corner, and I think all of them are starting to close in on Callum Leatham. There's a little bit of bodywork just flapping on the front right-hand corner of Bal Sidhu's car there. I think that might be a little bit of a dive plane, and is that affecting the handling? Because again, as he got on the throttle coming out of Lodge Corner, you could just see there was a small issue. Yeah, so something not quite right. It's almost the end plate, isn't it, of the front fairing that's just dropping down on his car.
Yeah, now I don't know whether he was involved in also a concertina at the restart when everyone was bunched up into Lodge. Oh, there's a squirm from Bal. That's because there's a car off in front of him, and that's Pillai with a moment at Cascade. So Hamandra Pillai is off the road, and I honestly think Bal Sidhu didn't know which side of the road to go next, so he dealt with that well. It wasn't actually his own moment, it was something happening right in front of him. That might be Pillai, well, I was going to say out of the race. He is still moving, as now we've got a real battle on for, well, 1st, 2nd and 3rd, continuing in Copa Shell.
Yeah, brilliant battle it is. The light blue car of Peter Hunter really feeling the pressure from Mike Dewhurst that sits behind. Then you've got the blue and red car of Paul Simerson. So this is for 7th, 8th and 9th places overall, but more importantly, 1st, 2nd and 3rd in Copa Shell. and they are closing in on what must be a slightly ill-handling car for Balsidou now, with that very light damage to the front right-hand corner. But there's just been a couple of occasions where you can just tell it's not quite handling as well as Bal would want it to be. It is literally just the end plate, isn't it, off the front valance, the front wing of the car, that's starting to flap around. So let's just have a quick look at the replay. In towards Cascades, all through the gravel trap goes Hamandra Pillai. Through the gravel, big slide sideways as he tries to gather the car up, and for Balsidou, he was probably, just almost caught his attention as to what was going on ahead of him, and he might have made a small mistake himself, just while briefly his attention was distracted by what was unfolding right out of the windscreen.
I think the best option when you're in that situation is just to leap on the brakes and then aim for probably where Pillai's car is right now, hoping that it's not there when you get to that bit of the circuit. But there was a big decision to be made there. It's also very easy because you almost get hypnotised by the car in front to sort of follow it off into the gravel, because you might naturally think that that's the racing line, and then you have to think, no, hang on a minute, the track goes left here at Cascades. So all things considered, Balsidou, he actually gained a place, of course, because of the demise of Pillai, who is running again now, but down in 14th position. So Balsidou needs to just eject that from his mind and push on to the checkered flag.
The lead battle for Copa Shell working its way out of Shell Oil's corner, and Paul Simerson is keeping it fully lit, bouncing over the curbs a little bit on the exit of the corner, raising the dust. That is just going to drop him maybe an extra half a car length back from the cars he's been trying to do battle with, which is Mike Dewhurst and Peter Hunter. And they're all starting to still just edge ever closer, I would say, towards Balsidou. The gap between Balsidou in 5th and Peter Hunter in 6th was 1.1 seconds at the start of this lap. Through the first sector of it, it looks as though Balsidou might have been a little bit quicker than the cars behind, but through the second sector, Peter Hunter was 0.3 of a second quicker, so it's a net gain of maybe 0.2 for Peter Hunter here over the car that he's ideally wanted to work his way past. If he can get past the black and the gold car, then that's at least a Trofeo Pirelli car that is acting as a buffer for him. But for the moment, he's not even caught Balsidou, and he's coming under increasing pressure from Mike Dewhurst for the lead of Copa Shell.
Yeah. And as he tries to look for a line, once he gets close enough to Balsidou, that's where Mike Dewhurst can potentially pounce. And it's not, strictly speaking, traffic. These are not tail enders, as in, the back of their lap. They are legitimately in 5th position, as Balsidou is. So these cars are qualified. Well, Balsidou is clearly quicker than these three. They've got to work out a way of getting by, but also, in Peter Hunter's case, not giving up his category lead in the process.
No, Bal has actually extended the gap a little bit, I think, on this lap. So Peter Hunter has really just to focus on hitting his marks, making sure he doesn't make any mistake. He sort of tried to V off Shell Oils there, but I think gave maybe an extra little bit of time away to Mike Dewhurst. In towards the braking area for the Britain chicane there will go. Use as much as the curb as you possibly can. Mike Dewhurst bounces his way over the curb, fires the car off the corner, heads through Hilltop, and starts to see whether he can prise the door open on the run down in towards Hislop's corner. But it's always going to be tight, isn't it, to try and sneak your way through up the inside at Hislop's, unless the car makes a mistake coming out of Britain's. Into the pit lane, we've got one, Johnny.
Yeah, Fedor Samarukov is into pit lane and may be out of the race. It's certainly for a lengthy chat with his team to work out precisely what the issue is, but unfortunately from his starting grid position he steadily descended down the timing screen and has struggled to stick with the pace of these Copa Shell runners. That might be down to a little gremlin within the car, of course, as well. So important to have this conversation before maybe rejoining. Mike Dewhurst, I liked his approach yesterday. He realised he wouldn't necessarily be able to get ahead of Paul Simerson in one corner, so it was all about actually setting the move up at Lodge before he finally completed it at Cascades, which is 2 or 3 corners later. So a good opportunity maybe later on in the race if he can play the long game and try and get somebody out of rhythm towards the end of the lap where he was very strong yesterday.
Yeah, he probably also needs to be conscious and he needs to look after those Pirelli tyres, because he did 11 laps in the qualifying session on his tyres. Peter Hunter, the man who leads Copa Shell and he's trying to hunt down, did 2 laps less in qualifying to set the pole time. So arguably he's got 2 more laps of life in his Pirellis before they really start to drop off. But Peter Hunter will only know one thing, and that's to drive as hard as possible. He'll be desperate to try and scoop up what I believe, if he were to, would be his first win in Copa Shell.
The other really interesting thing here is the amount of information that Pranav van Gaal has been able to take on board throughout the course of yesterday, because he's a heck of a lot closer this time to Gilbert Yates this deep into the race. We've only got 6.5 minutes still to go, and he is within, well, at times, half a second of the race leader. These drivers did exactly the same distance in qualifying for Trofeo Pirelli this morning, and both did their fastest laps on the 9th attempt. They did 10 laps in total, but Pranav van Gaal, he's had his breakfast cereal this morning, because he's sort of taken things on leaps and bounds compared to yesterday's equivalent race.
Amandra Pillai trying to carve his way through the traffic. Hussein Sert, he's able to squeeze his way past there. The number 55 car in the hands of the Turkish driver is allowed to be passed, and then the next focus will be to try and catch up on the man who's graduated out of Club Challenge from 2024, that being the number 13 car in the hands of Paul Dixon. So Amandra Pillai is, I suppose, having to do what Callum Leatham did yesterday in the race, and that's recover from an incident earlier on that dropped him right the way down through the order. Yeah,
and it's just important mentally to not let that affect you as much as possible. It's so frustrating, but you can, get frustrated once you're out of the car. It's important to make the best of a difficult situation within race. He made short work of Paul Dixon there, but he's gone out very, very wide. And where is his car going to end up? It's a big cloud of dust, and Dixon has to get quickly onto the brakes. The danger is that this might be another Joe Dean incident. Pillai, no, he stayed to the left-hand side of the track, so sensibly got completely off the throttle there. Leaders right together, unbeknownst to them, it was all kicking off at Old Hill Corner, but they are about halfway round this current lap.
They are halfway around the current lap, and there's still less than 0.6 of a second between the pair of them. So Tom Fleming, who acts as driver coach to Gilbert Yates, will be giving him all of the advice as and when he needs to. Benny Simonson is the man who is acting as driver coach for Pranav van Gaal as the two of them head over the bumps in towards the braking area for Lodge Corner. 4.5 minutes to go, plus the extra lap thereafter. And Gilbert Yates is looking to try and secure a third victory of the season. Remember, they scored a win apiece each at Navarra in Spain for the opening round of the Ferrari Challenge UK 2025. It was a win yesterday for Gilbert Yates, and let's see what he can do. We're going to see a quick replay of what I think was a mistake by Paul Simerson down at Hislop chicane, and that is him having to shortcut the chicane, and that's now lost him a chunk of time, so he's no longer really in that hunt, is he, with Peter Hunter and Mike Dewhurst for first and second and third in Copa Shell.
Pranav's off the road, though. He was pushing so hard to try and catch up with Gilbert Yates, and spins at Island Bend. He was fully sideways, so thankfully that didn't carry him then into Shell Oil's hairpin at speed. I'm hoping there wasn't any contact, but Pranav van Gaal, unfortunately, that's going to be his any chance of winning this race gone up in smoke, because he was so close. Maybe he thought he had the momentum into Island Bend, but that really now takes the pressure off Gilbert Yates.
Yeah, so Gilbert Yates can just sort of relax a little bit now. The heart rate will come down a little bit. He can just focus on maintaining whatever gap now exists between himself and Pranav van Gaal, who I think recovered. We're just getting a quick shot, and Pranav van Gaal goes in towards Island Bend. The car just starts to twitch on him as he starts to turn in, and then he tries to correct it, and that's just sufficient, Johnny, to push him wide. He slides across the grass, which is thankfully dry. Had that have been wet grass, that could have been a very different outcome.
Yeah, entirely, because it's very easy for a GT car like this to dig into the wet turf, and goodness knows where it may have ended up. So at least it was a relatively genteel spin, but the problem is, as you are a passenger, all you're thinking is, I could nearly have won this race, and now might be lucky to sneak onto the podium. He rejoined after a reasonable delay. What I'm trying to work out now is his current position. Is he still in second? Right, so Callum Leatham, despite being 13 odd seconds within touch, he's now 2 and a bit seconds behind, so he can maybe have some pressure towards the end of this race from that third placed car of Callum Leatham. But he didn't lose a position.
No, he lost 11 seconds in the sector with the spin, but then of course he got dirty tyres, so he lost about another second in the final sector whilst he was trying to clean up those Pirellis. The lead of Copa Shell turns its way out of Cascades. 'Twas ever number 82 Peter Hunter, the light blue car from Stratstone, Manchester, that still continues to lead the way. Amandra Pillai, after his second mistake, is now picking his way through and back past Hussein Sert. But the lead of Copa Shell, it's, I suppose, very similar to yesterday. Mike Dewhurst sitting there in second, waiting patiently, albeit it's a very different car that he's waiting behind today.
Yeah, well, he followed Paul Simerson for a number of laps within the Copa Shell battle on Friday. and we'll be doing about the same, but of course Peter will drive in a slightly different way. He may have the car set up differently from Paul Simonson as well. So this is again trying to weigh up his options. The problem is he's running out of laps now. We're into the final 90 seconds for the overall leader, and remember we go for an extra lap as well because it's 30 minutes plus 1 lap. So as soon as Gilbert Yates crosses the line with the clock at 0, that's where he'll get the 1 lap to go board, the last lap board. But that doesn't necessarily dictate where the Copa Shell cars are going to be at that point, and they'll have an extra lap at the end of that as well. So here they come into the final corner, the leaders within Copa Shell. There's a bit of a squirm there from Mike Dewhurst, so not the cleanest exit. Still got Peter Hunter in sight though. Yeah, they head on to what should be their penultimate lap of the race this time through. So Gilbert Yates onto his penultimate lap of the race. Plus the extra lap, of course, so clock will be at 0, and then we'll get the extra lap. So in towards the braking area for Cascades, Peter Hunter probably with about as large a gap as he's had for the last few laps, all to do with that small little wiggle that Mike Dewhurst had. So it wasn't much of a wiggle, but visually you can see the amount of daylight between the pair of them has increased as they head up towards Lakeside. Yeah, the problem is the more you squirm towards the end of the race, that's where the tyres are really being put through the mill. So you'll just feel that in general performance. It's not only a slight drop-off in time within the corner, but it's a bit of extra stress for these Pirelli tyres as well. The gap second to third within Trofeo Pirelli is within a second, and also John Marquardt not too far away either. So those places, second, third, fourth, and arguably fifth with Balsidou, maybe yet to be decided. And we're just going to go into that battle now, arriving at Hislops and Knickebrook. Yeah, so not a great deal of time between them all. So it's just 9/10 of a second back from Pranav Vangala is Chris Leatham. 8/10 back from that is John Marquardt. Another 9/10 back from that is Balsidou. And this is the train of cars that are just working their way through Druids at the moment. At the tail end of that little squabble is the 5th place car of Balsidou, and if he looks in his mirrors he can still see the Copa Shell front runners right with him. So the clock is at 0. Over the start finish line comes Gilbert Yates, so he is now onto his last lap of the race this time through, and he's under no pressure at all, is he, because of that problem for Pranav Vangala and the spin. Gilbert Yates, with 12 3/4 seconds to go, can just focus on bringing the car home for another win. And this time, Mike Dewhurst will have one more opportunity at Cascades, but for me, he just wasn't quite close enough as they streamed across the timing line directly in front of us. Paul Rogers does likewise as well. This is the yellow and red car then of Gilbert Yates, who leads Trofeo Pirelli. It is much closer first to second within Copa Shell, but Peter Hunter on course for a first ever victory in the sky blue number 82, because he's still got, well, at the line with us, 0.7 of a second. It's actually bunched up much more, though, as they exit Shell Oil's hairpin. It has, yeah, so Peter Hunter will be feeling the pressure as they head up towards the Britain chicane. The one good thing for Peter Hunter is that he's not quite close enough to the car ahead of him, Balsidou, so he can fully focus on just making sure he apexes correctly, gets cleanly off the corner, because, you know, it doesn't matter if he's a little bit slower in, as long as you cover off Mike Dewhurst, but make sure you get off the apex quickly. And time and opportunities are really running out for Mike Dewhurst now as they head through Knickebrook and up towards Clay Hill. Our race leader will be heading in towards very shortly the final corner, which will be Gilbert Yates, who is on course for another win here. He claimed a win yesterday and claimed his 12th pole position of the season, and Gilbert Yates is about to flash his way over the start-finish line now, and he wins the second race of the weekend here at Oulton Park. The battle, though, for Copa Shell is still raging, Johnny. It is. Peter Hunter on the cusp of getting his first victory. He's the joker in the Ferrari Challenge UK pack, but now is this the day it becomes very, very serious, because it's the Stratstone Manchester sky blue colours of Peter Hunter, who has fended off some of the best runners within the Copa Shell scrap, and well, welcome Peter to the championship fight, I would say, because that was an imperious drive. Yeah, well done to him. You can see what it means to the team as well, and his driver coach for this weekend, which is Michael Lyons. He's done plenty of winning in his time as well, racing whether it be contemporary GT cars or very much a historic racer as well, is Michael Lyons. But for Gilbert Yates, that is the perfect weekend, Johnny, is it not? Was he not fastest in free practice 1, fastest in free practice 2? He claimed pole yesterday and converted it to the win. He claimed pole today and converted it to a win as well. Fastest laps was the other thing we need to look out for, but I would imagine he's got both of those. He certainly got yesterday's, and you get a point for that. And you get, yeah, indeed, a point for the fastest lap, 1:35.725. So it's 2 lots of 18 points, one for yesterday, one for today, a maximum points haul. And Gilbert Yates going from strength to strength.
Yeah, could it be back-to-back championships for Gilbert Yates? There's a long, long, long way to go yet, as we've still got Brands Hatch and Donington Park and Silverstone still to come up. But Gilbert Yates has started the season in perfect form, really. When he didn't win that second of the 2 races at Navarra, he finished in second place, so he's not dropped many points at all so far this season. And he has now 12 pole positions on the trot, so he will be absolutely delighted with that as he just waves to the crowd and the marshals and makes his way around the circuit. For Peter Hunter, he's clenching his fist and shaking it out of the window. I've double checked and I've triple checked. I cannot see that Peter Hunter has had a win in Coperchel before, so he will be hugely, hugely pleased with that. It'll be an interesting interview, won't it?
It's always guaranteed, regardless of where he might have finished up and down the order. But I have faith in your statistics, Mark. And Peter Hunter will make us all aware whether this is his first big trophy or not. But as Dave Richardson's been saying, he's been in training over the winter period, both in terms of physique, but also the way he thinks through a race. And sports psychology is so important these days. He's almost conducting the crowd as he comes through Druids there and underneath Paul Warwick Bridge. I'm sure there's been plenty of local support, and he's brought a lot of family and friends as well from Manchester. Here at his local track, a great place to take a first win.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. You couldn't really write the script, could you? So he will be as pleased as punch. We'll, of course, get all the reaction from down there in the pit lane, and we'll have podiums and everything else as well. So there'll be plenty still to keep you entertained here at Oulton Park, even though the on-circuit activity in terms of the Ferrari Challenge UK has finished. The cars working their way in towards the pit lane. A win for Gilbert Yates overall for the reigning champion, and of course that's a win in Trofeo Pirelli and a win in Coperchel for Peter Hunter in 6th position overall in what was a difficult race for some, for Joe Dean, for Darren Howell, for Jonathan Satchel, not able to take the checkered flag. So out of the car jumps, that's Chris Leatham, isn't it? He had a solid race, didn't he? He said he was feeling nervous before. And Peter Hunter, there we go, on the top of the car, celebrating is Peter Hunter. So he looks very pleased with that one. Now the difficult thing is he's got to get down back off the car. Take it steady. There we go. He hops down off the car, congratulates the team, and I'm sure there'll be congratulations from some of his fellow drivers as well. He is a character in the field. He's well liked as well, isn't he?
Entirely so, and you can understand his approach. He tries to not take it too seriously, but once the visor comes down, that race door gets closed by the team, and he's left on his own. Well, with the coach in his ears as well, absolutely determined to get good results, and he feels, quite rightly so, that he can take some competition to the more established names within Coperchel, like Mike Dewhurst and particularly like Paul Simerson. It's going to be a 3-way scrap at least for the remaining races.
It must really build your confidence and give you so much momentum once you've done what we've just seen Peter Hunter do. A huge hug from Amanda Stretton, who is down there with our Coperchel winner. So hopefully we can hear from Peter Hunter, who's down there with Amanda Stretton in the pit lane.
We're waiting to hear what you've got to say, Peter. I mean, everybody down this pit lane is delighted for you. It's been a long time coming, and by God, did you work hard for that?
Well, title of my sex tape, it's been a long time coming. I've wanted first at Oulton Park for years. I've nearly had it a couple of times, been shunted off, ended up in second place, just missed out at first. But that was a really, really good race. Really, really good race. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I'm just buzzing my tits off, like, yeah.
Now, Mike Dewhurst was breathing down your neck all the way through. At one point at the beginning, you had a little bit of a gap, but then he closed it up. But it was so clean, and a testament to both of you and the camaraderie that he pulled alongside you as he came into the pit lane and just showed his appreciation and happiness for you.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Dewhurst and Paul Simerson, they are two fantastic drivers. And to be fair, I prefer attacking than defending, because you've just got to be on it all the time, and that was tiring, really, really tiring.
It's going to be a big night, isn't it?
No?
Oh, you've just bust my sunglasses now.
No, it will be a big no.
Well, listen, many congratulations. Off you go. You can go and enjoy the podium now. Dave, I think you've probably got the race winner.
Yes, him not being exactly in the pit lane where we were led to believe, so we've had to hightail it up here, Gilbert, because you were the wrong end of the pit lane for us. But many, many congratulations. Yeah. And a sure drive once again. I'm kind of running out of superlatives to describe your driving.
Yeah, it was a good race, but it got a bit close because with having the restart and stuff, my tyres were a bit older than Vangella's, so he had a wee bit fresher, and that mentally was a wee bit disturbing for me. So he got a bit close. We had a gap out and in, but then he couldn't keep the pressure on.
And to be fair, I mean, he really did pile the pressure on at one point and probably pushed a little bit too far. How much of that are you aware when you're driving your own race, Gilbert?
You know exactly where he is. You're checking your mirrors after every corner, but I made a mistake and he got really close to me, so I had to just defend hard so he couldn't get the drive off the corner and just try and manage that gap.
Well, many congratulations. We'll see you on the podium, friend.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So there we have it then. We have spoken to both of our winners in each of the categories, Trofeo Pirelli and Copa Shell. Please join us for the podium in but a few moments, Johnny and Mark.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, we'll very quickly look at some of the highlights of the first race. Well, there were 2 attempts at it because the first attempt saw, I'm afraid, an incident for Joe Dean, who lost the car coming out of Oulton corner, pitched it into the barriers whilst Joe was OK. That was the second car of the weekend that looked rather second-hand. So the second attempt at the race meant that it was a safety car restart in reality, single file, which meant that Gilbert Yates was not under the same amount of pressure from Pranav Vangala as otherwise he might have been. Pranav, remember, got a bit of a get-out-of-jail card as a result of some problems. There was some debris on track as Darren Howell and Jonathan Satchler got together. That brought about another brief safety car, and there was almost further contact when that safety car was about to head in towards the pit lane. Hemandra Pillai made a rally crossing moment as he went all the way through the gravel trap down at Cascades and eventually rejoined and would have to try and carve his way through the order. But in Copa Shell, a bit like yesterday, there were brilliant battles at the front. Peter Hunter under pressure from Mike Dewhurst and Paul Simerson. For Gilbert Yates, he was continually under pressure from Pranav Vangala, who stuck closer with him today than he did yesterday. After his off, Hemandra Pillai was trying to carve his way back through the order. He snuck through in ahead of Sahayan Surt, but then would have further problems as the race wore on. For Gilbert Yates, he was looking to try and convert another pole position into another win, as he did yesterday. And for Hemandra Pillai, as I say, carving his way back through the order after one mistake, he made another mistake and had to do it all again. Up towards Island Bend, Pranav Vangala, who'd done so well sticking close to the race leader, also made a small error. That put him off onto the grass. He lost about 11 seconds to the race leader, but amazingly did not lose a place. Then as the race wore on, up towards the checkered flag, we would see a third win of the season for Gilbert Yates. He'll be absolutely delighted with that. But more importantly, in Copa Shell, it was a first ever win in Copa Shell for Peter Hunter. We've just heard from him down there in the pit lane, and you can tell what it meant to him and what it meant to the team as well. So that's it for Oulton Park in terms of the racing activity. Of course, we've still got some podiums to get through as well in what have been blistering conditions here. And I think we should be able to head to the podium shortly, Johnny. But before that, let's just confirm the results for you. Gilbert Yates claims the win from Pranav Vangala and Callum Leatham in third place. John Marker had a really solid race, finishing in fourth, but only just ahead of Bal Sidhu in fifth. And sixth was the winner of Copa Shell, Peter Hunter, from Mike Dewhurst and Paul Simerson, who will wrap up the Copa Shell podium. Then, in ninth place, it was Paul Rogers from Stephen Dobson. Paul Dixon, Hussein Surt, Hemandra Pillai were the last of the finishers. Problems for, I'm afraid, Frederick Samarakov, Johnny Satchel, Darren Howell and Joseph Dean also not seeing the checkered flag. That's the results. So, from our commentary box, let's go down to the podium and Dave Richardson.
How did I forget your name? Mark Werrell. It's been etched on my mind almost forever, you know. Right, welcome to the podium. And here we go then. First and foremost, it is going to be our Trofeo Pirelli podium. Please give it up, make it loud and proud in the sunshine. Taking P3, here comes Callum Leatham. For P2, he gave it everything he could and then some, Pranav Vangala. And once again, on the top step of the podium, the man is a machine, Gilbert Yates. And of course, please welcome the dealer representative from Charleshurst. Do rush along, chap. And we're delighted to welcome Ferrari factory driver James Collado to make the trophy presentations. First of all, to Callum Leatham. He collects the P3 trophy, then P2 for Pranav Vangala, and P1, of course, for Gilbert Yates. Great news for the Charleshurst team, of course, the Copa team, and they will be in receipt of their trophy in just a moment. There it is. And again, we welcome Matteo Vigano, Pirelli Motorsport, to make the Pirelli trophy presentation to Gilbert Yates. Handshakes all round. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready to make some noise because the guys now are going to lift their trophies really high and smile from ear to ear. Such is their delight. Hang on, hang on. Charleshurst make haste their escape, coward. Oh, that's a great shot of three superstar drivers. Here comes the champagne. Andy and I, no, I'm not going to say anything. We've managed to avoid that thus far. Callum Leatham has taken a great deal of it, it has to be said. So podium celebrations, absolutely brilliant for our Trofeo Pirelli drivers. In receipt, of course, of their trophies for the race, and of course for Gilbert Yates, he's also in receipt of the lovely Pirelli trophy as well. So as the drivers make their way off the podium, we will ready it for our Copa Shell drivers. Claudio, my man there, doing a brilliant job. And we are ready for our Copa Shell podium right now. Taking P3, what a drive. Please give it up for Paul Simerson. And again, another driver that gave it all he can. In P2, it's Mike Dewhurst. And with a spirit of foreboding and concern and worry, here comes Peter Hunter! And of course, there they are. Are we calling a dealer or not? We are calling Peter Hunter's dealer, of course. Come along. You've changed your T-shirt. You coward. You coward. Right. James Collado, once again, will be making the trophy presentations. There's Paul Simerson in receipt of his trophy. And then Mike Dewhurst in receipt of his. And then it'll be Peter Hunter. And stand by, Stratstone Manchester, who are already prepared clothing-wise for the shower they may get. And there they are. Right, gentlemen, if you will, please. Your trophies high. Big smiles all round. Don't remove any clothes, Peter Hunter. All the photographs are being taken for the world's media. Whoa, 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 whoa. Stratstone Manchester escape from the podium. And the top three there, Peter Hunter, Mike Dewhurst, Paul Simerson. And now it's time for the champagne. So some fantastic podium celebrations down here. And right now, it's back to you in the commentary booth. Gentlemen.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, that brings a close to our footage here from Oulton Park. Johnny, it's been a good weekend, hasn't it?
Splendid. Really good advertisement, I would say, for the Ferrari Challenge at UK. The points then look like this as we head away from Oulton Park, Mark.
Yeah, Gilbert Yates leads the championship on 67 championship points, which now means he has a 14-point advantage over Pranav Vangala, who's second. Callum Leatham is on 34 there in third, and it's John Marquardt in fourth place. Only just, though, 4 points ahead of Bal Sidhu, who's fifth. Hemandra Pillai, sixth. Oscar Ranjensvik sitting there in seventh, ahead of Frido Samarakov, and Joe Dean, after a troubled weekend, is only going to leave Oulton Park with 6 championship points in Trofeo Pirelli. As for Copa Shell, well, in Copa Shell, it's all going to be very tight at the top end. Mike Dewhurst is on 57, just a 2-point gap between himself and Paul Simerson, and the win we've just seen for Peter Hunter means that he is only 7 points off the championship lead, albeit he's in third overall. Stephen Dobson is there in 4th, ahead of Paul Rogers in 5th place, and Paul Dixon wraps up the top 6. Darren Howell, Jonathan Satchel, Hussein Sert, and Sean Ran complete the top 10 in Copa Shell. So it could not be any closer as we head towards Brands Hatch in about 3 weeks' time for the next weekend of racing. And thanks for joining us here at Oulton Park. We've been blessed with some brilliant sunshine, some fantastic racing. We'll do it all again at Brands Hatch next time out. So until then, it's goodbye.